From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to SBI TV, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we're going to explore how the trend in B2B towards enhanced customer experience requires a purposeful engagement strategy. I'm your host, Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. Joining me in the studio today is a longtime friend of mine, John deLorimier. John is the Executive Vice President and Chief Experience Officer for Concentra. Concentra is a national healthcare company. They focus on improving the health of America's workforce, one patient at a time. So through their affiliated clinicians, the company provides occupational medicine, urgent care, physical therapy, and wellness services for more than 520 medical centers in 44 states. So John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt.
Great to see you.
Good to be here.
So for those of you that are watching and listening out there and you don't want to miss a weekly show, especially with my buddy John, if you want to access our content library, download the SBI app via the Apple Store, search for Sales Benchmark Index, and you can use the notifications, take us with you on your commute, travel, and workout routine. So buyers have changed. They're more self-serve now than ever before. And everybody's watching this is nodding, going, yes, I got it. However, providers need to make available more useful information, more applicable info for specific customer scenarios at specific times that allow customers and prospects to take action. And self-education can be dangerous. And this is because users often overestimate how much they know and how much they understand the complexity of a market solution. So, John, that's kind of the setup. I'd love for you, before we jump into the segment, just to maybe talk a little bit about your background and what you do. You are incredibly qualified to talk about this emerging trend that I think we're still in the early days on. But first off, tell us a little bit about you and Concentra, and then we'll jump into the show.
Yes, thanks, Matt. Yeah. Thanks for being here. It's always a pleasure to see you and the team. So thanks for that. I'm the Executive Vice President of Concentra, as you said. Yep. Growth and Customer Experience is my new title.
I like it.
Yes, and it took some time on that one. Yeah. And I think I'll just note this, is I used to be Chief Marketing and Sales Officer. Yeah. But I think from what we're about to talk about, it's important that I changed my title purposely. Yep. To start focusing on what I think is more important than anything else right now is customer experience. Yep. So to your question, Concentra, as you mentioned, we have 520 medical centers retail. We have another 130 on-site medical centers. We have 1,500 docs. We have 800 physical therapists across the country. And we provide certainly the largest occupational medicine provider in the country. We see 1 out of every 5 injuries in the United States. And we do a variety of other services. But for the most part, down to this, what we're talking about 160 field account executives, about 50 account management, and we can talk about that a little later, and that concept of account management, and then inside account managers and inside salespeople, right. Anything else that, and a digital platform as well. So I don't think that's news to anybody, but I manage that, and I'm constantly looking, as you know, of what we can do to change our channel strategy to make sure that we are adapting to the customer's needs. And then that leads me to the experience part.
Very good. So something that's interesting about John, and I've had the pleasure of watching John over the decade plus that we've known each other, is he's had the entire commercial function. And this gives him an advantage of sales, marketing, product, and now, as John says, experience. The symbolism of him changing his title signals to the marketplace, both internally and externally, the customer experience matters. This is early, and John's one of the earliest folks to do that. And we had an interesting debate last night about, should it be somebody who reports up into John? Should it be John? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. John, this last segment, you and I are going to talk about what we titled last night as the dangers of self-serve, right? So interestingly, you think about the tendencies of buyers, right? They want to go through, procure information as they want, and they'll talk to a salesperson on their terms, but they want to educate things. And as you said, they want it to be frictionless, whether it's an inside person who's over the telephone with me, right, whether it's live chat, or whether I want you to come to my office. But it's got to be frictionless and it's got to be omni-channel. So I guess, how do you think about this concept of having a market leadership role with an ever-educated buyer who's consuming information at a rapid rate on multiple channels that a seller might not even know they're consuming information. How do you square that circle?
Well, I think that I think we bring that together by making sure that that as salespeople, right? This goes back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, that they understand the business problems and they can connect those dots. That doesn't go, that's not new either, right? Yeah. We've been, we can take that back to consultative selling, application selling, and challenger selling now, I guess, if you, from, go back 40 years all the way to spin selling, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Rackham.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so all that to be said is those sales skills are still there, right? However, that if you're not understanding the entire business environment of your decision maker, right? And if you're not understanding who's in their organization, if you're not, if you don't understand who their boss is, who their peers are, who their subordinates are, you're not, and making sure that you understand that, you are probably going in with your hand tied behind your back. And Matt, you and I have emphasized this for years, right? Yep. But it's absolutely more important that we do this now because, to your point, the educated buyer is more educated. Yep. They think they're more educated. Now this becomes interesting, right? Because now you have to walk them back saying, Mr. Customer, I appreciate your point of view, but
I got an idea.
But I have an idea. Or, I have other customers who do this. Or, there's certainly finesse there.
Yeah.
But you got to walk them back.
So how do you do that, John, like in a fashion of reteaching, or you talk about challenger, unteaching salespeople to then have them be able to actually be a little bit ahead of the customer, where the customer says, I'm getting a significant amount of value such that to pay a premium, because if you're calling on me with an outside rep, that's a more expensive channel.
Absolutely.
It's going to be reflected in the product or the service that I procure, right? Simple economics. So how do you drive that mechanism through the sales organization to make it stick?
I don't.
Yeah.
Haven't cracked that code.
Yeah. It's hard.
I haven't cracked that code. When I was in my consulting days, I had an engagement with a very, very, very large telecom provider. And I was working with their global accounts, who were the cream of the crop, right? The best of the best. And they weren't particularly that good, as we all know. But all that to be said is, and you've been here too. Yeah. They didn't care one iota about learning anything new. Yeah. So it's really true. Teaching an old dog a new trick is tough. Teaching a sales organization that, thinks they're doing pretty well is really hard. I haven't cracked the code. Yeah. And I continue to beat on it. From your point earlier, sales enablement. We do a lot of, podcasts. We're out in the field a lot. We're coaching. We're teaching. We're teaching the sales directors. We're teaching the vice presidents. Constantly trying to build that culture. It's really tough.
I would tell you, from the outside looking in, in terms of investment in people, we always kind of think about revenue growth excellence as 50% performance conditions and 50% talent. You got to have both. The mechanisms you've put in place, what I call kind of cadence mechanisms, from coaching meetings to tools to enablement to sales process to hiring process to, like the little book you brought into, you have a lot of it. My point of saying that is John's got a lot of experience that you can lean on, and there still is a mechanism around getting people to do something different on Monday than they were doing on Friday. That sometimes what's old is new, right? Yeah. You and I grew up in old school sales organizations where the Monday morning meeting and the expectation with your coach and, hey, how you have a good day, those are some good basics.
No, I agree.
That I would tell you that some of the greatest organizations we see right now do some of the oldest things well.
And I agree with that completely. I think some of those, the blocking and tackling that we all grew up with are still strong. Yep. Here's my point on all of that is that, and you mentioned it, is the hiring, right? I am convinced, I haven't cracked this code either, but the idea of hiring people who are, I'm really interested in people who are really fear of failure. personal failure. I want to go back. I want to ask questions of, were you successful in high school? Were you successful in grade school? Were you successful in college? Whatever that is. I want people who really, one of the big drivers is fear of failure. Because I think that they get up and they're going to go do the best they can because they're just competing with themselves.
Yeah.
And then the other piece, and you mentioned this, is discipline.
Yeah.
Right? Do they have the discipline to manage their day, manage their book, manage their territory? Do they have that discipline? And you and I talked about time management and discipline, and I loved your term discipline better than mine. But the idea of those two things, if I can find them, I am so tired, Matt, of people worrying about their comp plan, right? I think salespeople spend more time trying to maneuver their comp plan versus going out to sell.
And doing the work.
And I want people to just go sell and know that that work they'll be paid, right? And that to me is what I'm looking for. It's just it's time that salespeople. I think salespeople have to change dramatically in the next few years, or as Forrester said, they will become they'll become obsolete.
All right. So, John, last question. If we think about sort of pulling this thread back around customer experience, you talk about brand experience and the brand promise. You think about these marketers that are trying to serve up the right content through the right channel at the right time to the right buyer. You've led the function multiple times. Any last minute advice you would give to those marketers as they think about their content strategy around experience?
I think we talked about that. I think focusing totally on content, dissemination of that content, and where you're putting that content, and if it's what the voice is, right? The voice coming from the customer, not from the employer. That the voice has to change, and it has to be very, very business and business problem centric. Because that's what people read,
as opposed to product centric.
And let me. And the other piece that I think is important from a marketer standpoint is, and this is from a sales leadership standpoint, that we used to, and you mentioned that I own all these functions, which makes it very helpful, that I get to fight with myself for the most part.
That's right.
But for the other organization that now becomes critical, that I think that if you're leading sales, if you're leading marketing or product or any of those pieces, if you're not tied to the hip to your CIO, you're missing something. That the CIO is going to bring to you that enhanced value proposition and that customer experience, because 80% of it is technology and then process that goes with it. But the CIO and you should be together. You should have a weekly, if not, maybe every 2-week meeting with the CIO to let them know what you're doing and what your vision is of what that customer brand experience and brand promise could be.
All right, folks. Great show from John. So, John, appreciate seeing you, man. Always good to see you. And you always have great opinions, and you did not stop short on this one. So, John left us with a couple of great to-dos, right? Brand experience and brand promise. How do you connect them? CIO and the Chief Commercial Officer. What's your cadence look like? And how are you aligned, right? It used to be sales and marketing alignment. John, I think, just gave us the new alignment equation. So that's some good takeaways. As always, the team and I appreciate you tuning in, your eyes and ears, because you have a choice on where you spend them. Thank you for your continued support, and that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.